It's Thursday, October 24th. I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast. It is a hell of a day to talk ball. It really is a hell of a day to talk ball. We got some big things to talk about. And joining me to do just that is the man himself, Nate Tice. Nate, what's going on, buddy?
Not much. Yeah. Thankfully, the big news that we're going to talk about happened before the show. Again, this is what's so nice sometimes is that we get a little buffer before we have to break this stuff down there, because there's nothing worse than you record a pod and the news breaks right after, and then you just go, do we re-record? Do we add on? No, not this time. Not this time. Not today. That's why it's a great day to be here, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Of course, always. Yeah, it's great that we'll talk about the DeAndre Hopkins trade and how that broke it. I mean, as I was getting coming downstairs from waking up on the East Coast. This thing was super early, so was able to get a lot of film work done before it. So it's going to be great because we are here, as we are every week, in the fantasy film room. For the people who are new, the big Nate Tice bros, the big Nate Tice ladies out there who just love Nate's work and are just now coming into the fantasy film room, this is how this goes every single week. First part of the show, we take a trending fantasy topic that we're going to dive into. We're going to go deep, stats, film, the whole thing. And then in the back half of the show, Nate has a topic he's nerding out about. We might have saying the quiet part out loud. I do have a topic for us there if we get to it. We do have a lot of stuff to talk about, so maybe we won't get to it, and then we will wrap the show with a Thursday night preview, share some prop bets, and that also is a pretty juicy game, Rams-Vikings, and there's maybe some more trade storylines, but let's waste no more time. The topic today was actually going to be offensive fallout from major wide receiver injuries. We are going to talk about that, but the Chiefs gave us something else to talk about. And I think this kind of fits into the topic here anyways, because the Chiefs are dealing with so many wide receiver injuries. They're also dealing now with the Juju Smith-Schuster injury because he was going to be the savior of this wide receiver room somehow in the year 2024. He might miss a couple of games here. So they go ahead and trade for DeAndre Hopkins of the Tennessee Titans. They send a conditional 4th round pick to Tennessee. Hopkins is on his way to Kansas City. So, Nate, a lot of things we can go off of here, but just basically first reaction to this move for you.
They wanted someone with some size in their receiver room. They have several gadgety type receivers, I would say, in Xavier Worthy and McCole Hardman. McCole Hardman's still getting jet sweep and end around touches, even though Xavier Worthy's there. So that must be noted. But this is, even if DeAndre Hopkins is past his prime, he still has juice. Like, he still can do a role well. Is he a true bona fide number 1 top 10 guy? No, but he is a guy that is worthy of targets and worthy of touches. And this type of offense that the Chiefs are running right now, which is more safe, it's a high floor offense. Patrick Mahomes is throwing into open windows at the highest rate of his career, which is, I think, indicative of him. Let's make sure this guy's wide open. I don't need to take a chance here with some trick shot. Let's make sure this guy's open. Okay, and then I'm going to throw it. So Mahomes is playing a little safer. This is the emergency button. This is the tightly covered, we're getting pressed man. I got to throw up a 50-50 ball. I got to give a guy a chance. I got to make a tight throw in the red zone. That's where I think the high leverage situations like third down and red zone is where this DeAndre Hopkins move is going to be felt. So I think the trickle down effect of Hopkins, which we can get into, is going to be the best thing for this Chiefs offense. How it's going to let other players loosen up in their roles, which is needed because of kind of how, Rashee Rice getting hurt doesn't help. But it's kind of needed at this point. And with this Chiefs offense still being good and efficient, even if it's not explosive, this is, I think, just another answer that they can have as they face more defenses.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mega boring offense to watch, but it is an efficient offense, and it's kind of like death by 1,000 paper cuts with the Kansas City Chiefs and the occasional Patrick Mahomes scramble where nobody wants to hit him on the sidelines.
It's the Ichiro Suzuki offense. That's the just singles and some stolen bases. That's it.
I'm sure for people in the audience that hit, it obviously baseball reference right over my head.
Dang.
But yeah.
But I'll get you with Ichiro.
No. I mean, I got you though. I pick up what you're putting down here, and that is definitely the Kansas City Chiefs offense. Yeah. So, yeah, look, number one, I will just say my first reaction to this, and yes, all the smart people out there on Twitter to remind me that it's the year 2024 and DeAndre Hopkins is not the player that he used to be. Thank you for the reminder. But my first reaction was, wow, like legitimately, this is the first time we have a ball winning outside X receiver in Kansas City. I mean, in the Patrick Mahomes era ever.
Yeah, I know.
Ever.
Like DeMarcus Robinson is kind of, sort of, but not this extent. Yeah, not to this level. He was more of a route runner type. Yeah, I don't know.
And like, yes, maybe Sammy Watkins, but he's definitely not a ball. He's definitely not a ball winner, and not really like truly an X receiver either. Weird player in his prime, Sammy Watkins. But anyways,
we'll talk about him one day. I actually want to hear your Sammy Watkins takes. That would be fun. We go through like the receivers of yesteryear, be like, what'd you think about him in this time? Because I actually don't know your Sammy Watkins takes. I have takes.
Brother, that was a journey. That was a journey. I'll just say that. So with Hopkins coming in here, again, he does fill a position that I think has been lacking on this offense for a long time. Now, again, he is not the player that he was in his prime. I got a chance to go in and chart 3 games for him this morning for reception perception. Now, I'll admit I probably watched like 0.0 Titans film before this or like any sort of deep dives. Couple of things here. Man, that offense is a tough watch. I actually think Brian Callahan is doing a good job. I've seen some like complaints about Callahan, and maybe there's play calling stuff. I don't think he's ever actually called plays before, so definitely a lot on his shoulders as a new head coach. But formation wise, I kind of like what they're doing. I just don't think they really have any good players. I mean, almost period. Ridley has like been kind of a mess this year. Tony Pollard's played well. Tyler Boyd was not a needle mover in his prime, and he's a declining player now. And their offensive line has been up and down because they have a lot of young players there. They're working in some new stuff, and the quarterback. You and I and producer Colin were talking about it beforehand, and Colin asked me like, "What do you think about Will Levis?" I'm like, "Nothing you don't already know, buddy." Yep. Your take was they gave it a shot.
You gave it a shot. That I even wrote about him this summer. That's basically what my summary was. It was like, why not? Like it's a dart throw. It missed the board completely. But, you got to make the throw. You threw it.
You gave it a shot.
Some other teams.
So they'll try again next year for something else. But watching Hopkins in isolation, I mean, he definitely is still playing X receiver. I saw you tweet out from Next Gen Stats that he has been an on-the-line player exclusively. These 3 games I've got him, or not exclusively, but these 3 games I've got him at 81.9%. Yeah. That's right around like the amount of times he's been on the line of scrimmage. What I actually really like from him, Nate, is when they line him up as the X receiver and he's like the lone receiver in a 1x3 set or 1x2 set or something like that, but he's kind of condensed. He's closer to the line of scrimmage. A lot of these teams will, like Aiyuk did that a lot with the 49ers and things like that, because he's still pretty crafty off the line of scrimmage. He doesn't get off the line of scrimmage very fast, but he still is a pretty crafty player. Like if he can get the outside and snap back inside and gain that little second of leverage, he actually can be really good on slant routes and little quick hitters, things like that, against man coverage. It's just he's not going to give you anything down the field separation wise, man coverage. But I like that he sits in zones really well. I like that he works on those in breakers well. So I do expect him to play X, but also do some slot receiver stuff on the inside. So from a fantasy perspective, he's definitely not going to be a wide receiver 1 or a wide receiver 2 or anything like that, but he'll get some targets here, and I think he'll give you some weeks.
Yeah, and I think he'll get some touchdowns too because of the designs and like it makes sense, his role, and also Mahomes kind of needing that big body in the end zone. Everything you're saying about the on ball stuff, it's the domino effect of him being able to play on ball loosens up the role of Xavier Worthy and Travis Kelce, who. True. I think an underrated thing with Kelce, or understated thing, I should say, is how much he was put in motion in the past. How much they were putting him back and forth motion, off-ball stuff. I mean, just think of the first touchdown against the Eagles in the Super Bowl. I know I'm just drawing a random play, but it comes to mind. That's a back and forth motion. He's off ball. He can't get pressed, and he gets a free release and runs a corner route. That is how Kelce has to be used these days. Like, he's become a good blocker, by the way. Like props to Travis Kelce, kind of reinventing himself from probably one of the worst tight end blockers in the league, and everyone used to get mad at me for saying that. I'm like, dude, it's true.
It is what
to
it is,
now, like, he's good at it. So it's kind of cool to see him kind of like reinvent that career. But because he has to be off ball, Xavier Worthy has to be off ball. Xavier Worthy has been bad against press this year, which should be expected at 158 pounds or whatever he is. That's kind of what his negatives were. I mean, that's
Nate, why. I think you make Worthy lighter and lighter every show.
I think I started at 165 and now I'm at 158 with him. So
next week he'll be 157 or something. Yeah.
Hey, it's the NFL season, man. It's attrition. They lose weight. So, but he is ideally used as an off-ball player or a Z or a guy that can move around with motion. Same with Hardman. because Hopkins doesn't need that necessarily. Doesn't he's not going to be the greatest player ever, but he can still win enough from on ball that he's a threat. Formationally, there's some more creativity that can happen. These guys their roles get loosened up. I think that's just the best way I can put it. So I think that's where I actually like this. Yes, Kelsey's a shell of himself. Worthy is Worthy. They got kind of the funky bunch around them. But Hopkins at least having this role that he can excel at, I still believe he can, that is what's just going to help out everybody else. And that matters a lot. We've talked, now I get to talk about them every show now, apparently, is the Jags. Talked about how fragile their personnel is. Well, this guy can only be this. This guy can only be this. The Chiefs are kind of getting into that problem a little bit with their passing game. That's why you had to rely on the Watsons of the world. That's why, because those guys can at least do the on-ball stuff. So I do like that this is going to at least add some more formational stuff for the Chiefs, who I still think is just one of the most effective offenses this year, even if it hasn't been sexy. Mahomes, I wrote about the Chiefs last week, but Mahomes has been targeting throws past the sticks at the lowest rate of his career, but he's still as efficient as ever. So that to me is 5-6 yard gains, not 10-12 yard gains. This is the 10-yard gain guy, DeAndre Hopkins. That little space that they haven't been attacking, that's where Hopkins comes into play. So I like this move a lot. It feels like it's 6 months too late, but it still feels like, oh yeah, this makes sense. And it makes sense more when you look at the rest of the Chiefs personnel.
Yeah, I mean, Justin Watson is third on this team in routes run, and he's been targeted 8 times on the season. 8. The sacrificial X receiver stuff. Yeah. I've kind of lost control of the bit with the sacrificial X receiver stuff. Yeah. But this is what I mean by it. Justin Watson is the sacrificial X. And everything you just laid out there about just having that on ball player and how it loosens everything up for everyone else. That's the point of the sacrificial X. But putting Hopkins in that role, it's okay, yeah, he is gonna he's gonna run go routes and stuff like that that they're probably not gonna throw him the ball on. Although I will say his touchdown against the Packers was definitely just go route down the sideline. Yeah. He's not open, but he's open because he can go and win that ball. So he will have those moments, but also, he's running those routes, and it's going to just allow them to do all the stuff about hey, when Juju's healthy, he's your power slot receiver. Yep. Worthy is your move around guy. Cause I mean, I don't want to be mean, but the real receiver stuff for Worthy, it just is really bad at this point. He is not a guy that they threw him 8 targets this week, and it's just, or this last game, it's people are excited about that, but watch the 8 targets. And I know they missed him on one deep, Mahomes missed him on one deep shot. It's okay, that's one. Now tell me about the rest of the plays. Hopefully they can connect on those, and hopefully they can use more of those to, hopefully he can have more of those as opposed to the real deal wide receiver stuff. I don't want him running the Rashee Rice crossing routes and stuff like that, because watch him with the ball in his hands. He gets pinned down in a second. And Hopkins is definitely not giving you anything after the catch either. So that's why I think just him as that boundary player, opening things up for everyone else. And occasionally, it's 3rd and 6. Have him be that condensed X receiver and get outside leverage, and then, get inside leverage, and then just he gets a first down there. He can be a bit of a chain mover.
We've talked about this when this was the beginning of the year. We're talking about, what Worthy, where he's going to help out this offense, is opening up space for Rashee Rice. And we looked smart there for a little bit before the Rice injury happened. Same thing. Just now picture it's DeAndre Hopkins. He's not a yak guy, but still think of him on an intermediate routes, overs, routes where he can be a big body. And like you said, it's not Justin Watson now. It's DeAndre Hopkins, who is just a little more juice with that. So if Xavier Worthy takes the top off, that creates space for Kelsey. That creates space for Hopkins. Yes, they're 80% of their what we think of them, but it's still solid players that are worthy of these targets. So I just kind of, this makes a lot more sense to me with how these other guys have to be used. I think Derek Klassen had, I looked it up too, but I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it was Worthy's been pressed 19. I think it was like 28 routes or 36 routes, somewhere like that. But it's been only
I've
one
got
catch.
this because I retweeted it, of course, because it fits my agenda.
But mine too. So that's why I'm bringing it up again.
Right, exactly. Derek Klassen at QB Class per NFL Pro. Xavier Worthy versus Press this year: 27 routes, 3 targets, 0 catches. Yep. And again, that tracks on film. And the interception
against the Bengals
on film.
Yeah.
So,
and not just to fully just always just bash Worthy, but it's just he has to have a limited role. That's what he is. The 158 shows up more than the 4.240. Like that,
Totally.
it really does. And I'm glad you brought up the yak stuff, because that's where my arguments for size come into play. Size matters when you have the ball in your hands too. Chris Godwin is good with the ball in his hands. Hopefully he gets back healthy. But is good with the ball in his hand. Oh, I know. Devastated. Because he's so strong. Like, he's not the fastest guy in the world, but he's fast enough, but he's so strong. And when you watch Worthy getting, Malik Mustafa knocking it back 7 yards when he gets hit, yeah, that's hard. That's just a hard way to live. So yeah, again, everyone slots into better spots here. And for a Chiefs offense that I thought has had a super high floor this year. I can't, it's death by 5-yard gains. It really is, but it's good. And now they got somebody that can get him those 10, 12-yard gains like that. And as opposed to the deep stuff, that's why you have Worthy. Now you got someone that can get those intermediate areas, and that's Hopkins.
Yeah, we'll see how many times he's targeted per game, but I like the area. I feel pretty good about the areas of the field in which he will be targeted. So yeah, again, from a fantasy perspective, we're not saying he's about to just go to the moon here, but just because he's in Kansas City, but clearly fits out a pretty nice role for this team. I mentioned the Justin Watson stat, just one last Chiefs wide receiver stat. That's funny and really leans into the bit. Sky Moore's been targeted 3 times this year, and he's dropped 2 of them. I don't know what you thought about Sky Moore coming into the league, man. Number one, I hate how they've used him. I don't know why are you playing this guy outside ever? Makes no sense to me.
No.
But anyways, beyond the point, you cannot tell me there's a wide receiver who has more of the yips than Sky Moore. I mean, you can't tell me
thing in college at all.
I know. You can't tell me he's not thinking as that ball's coming in. Can't drop this one. Oh, I dropped it. Yeah. Feel bad for the guy.
And it's a real thing. We talked about yesterday with Jalen Polk. It's these guys get in their head and they go, okay, I get 1 target a game, 2 targets a game. Here it comes. And then it's another drop. A.D. Mitchell at the beginning of the year. It's just, these guys, they get into their head. But Sky Moore, to me, is, I'm glad we were saying about the outside stuff, is yes, he was played like that in college, but that was because it was a Bryles offense where he was running glance routes on RPOs over and over. Him, to me, is get him on the move, get him rolling, get him in. I liked him on in breakers. That's where I thought he would just maybe a yak guy. I was lower than maybe how he got pumped up at the end in the draft process, but I still when he went early second, mid second, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I had a late second, early third grade on him, so it wasn't crazy to me. But it's just one of these things where now every target becomes an adventure with him. And this rookie year, he was doing smart things too. I still remember he adjusted to a blitz one time. I can just remember these plays. And I was like, oh, that's good. That's good. But it just never kind of added layers to it. So.
Yeah, that's I'm always on my radar with the rookies or second year guys when it just starts to slip away really quick and it can become an avalanche. So I'm sure we'll talk about that again at some point. But let's move into some of these other offenses here that again we're talking about fallout from major wide receiver injuries. And I'm going to move the Bucs here up actually on the outline just because you mentioned Chris Godwin, and like I said, I continue to say it just so devastated about this Chris Godwin thing. It's killing me inside for a variety of different reasons. But anyways, the Bucs are now going to be without Chris Godwin for the rest of the year. They're also going to be without Mike Evans for a few weeks here, it sounds like. So Nate, when we look at this Bucs offense, we've got, I think, a play caller that you and I have both really enjoyed this year in Liam Cohen. Got a quarterback who, he is he's a top 2 quarterback in fantasy somehow is Baker Mayfield because he's throwing a bunch of touchdowns to these 2 great receivers. What's that going to look like? And lastly, these other depth receivers here, Sterling Shepard, Jalen McMillan, Trey Palmer. What are we thinking about this offense without Chris Godwin and Mike Evans at least for a little bit?
I kind of want the mystery box of Jalen McMillan. I know what he is. I watched him in college and stuff, but that's the one I'd be betting on of these 3. Trey Palmer's got some juice, but you can tell that they are kind of no, you're a role guy. They kind of struggle to add more snaps. I haven't looked at his snap count, but that's kind of they're trying to find other guys. That's why Sterling Shepard's been in there because he's a little more trustworthy. Baker probably loves him too. But McMillan, they were singing his praises this summer. They were talking about oh yeah, this guy's going to figure out so much stuff. And I thought, we've talked about this a few times, where he kind of has some outside ability, where he can line up. And that's where maybe we're excited to see him on the outside, even though he's mostly in the slot in college at Washington. That's the guy I kind of would be keying on because I just think they're high on him. And also it's one of these where it's all right, step up. That's why we drafted you fairly high. And that's why, let's get those touches. This is your chance. So Shepard's going to be the steady Eddie of this offense and the kind of the 4 or 5 catch, 40, 50 yard guy. But I think McMillan is the dart throw I would take if I had to pick one of these guys, just because I do think he has some talent. There's going to be opportunity here, and they felt like they liked him. I think they gave him a jet sweep touch on a third and short on Monday night, which I think is significant because you're not doing that for someone you don't like. So that, especially in those situations. So that was a good promising sign. So maybe he hit a little rookie wall that first month. It happens. And then now it's like, all right, we got to go. We need you now. So do like him. I think this is a good opportunity for him.
Yeah, really the key here, and there's no way to know going into this. I know that just sounds like cop-out analysis, but really the key is like who is going to play the slot between these three guys, because all of them have slot receiver experience. Sterling Shepard was mostly a slot receiver during his years with the Giants. Jalen McMillan, as you mentioned, was a slot receiver in college, although they've tried to use him as a flanker. And then Trey Palmer was like a speed slot for Dave Canales' offense last year, but he is mostly kicked to the outside this year so that Chris Godwin can go back to the inside, which I think is the better use of obviously of Chris Godwin. So none of these guys profiles like the big power slot yak guy Chris Godwin is. And when we get to the Rams, we'll talk about the Rams Thursday night game. We'll talk about the Bucs should just send whatever the Rams want for Cooper Kupp to go be Chris Godwin, who was being Cooper Kupp, but I don't think that's probably. I mean, shoot, Chris Godwin was playing the Cooper Kupp role in Liam Cohen's offense, who was with Cooper Kupp in 2022.
So great.
It makes so much much sense.
Yeah,
that it's never going to happen. I think I've mentioned this before. My personal trainer is a Bucs fan, and I had a session with him this morning, which is why I delayed the podcast. And he's like. Don't you know anybody there? Like, why is this not happening? I'm like, oh, number one, I don't. Number two, because it makes too much sense to happen. So don't get your hopes up about it. But it would make a lot of sense. As for these three guys, I don't know that any of them really profile as that power slot player. They definitely don't. They're all smaller. To be honest with you, just haven't really been that impressed with what I've seen out of McMillan this year.
I haven't either. Okay, I hear you're a little. So I've been kind of hedging what I was saying here. So okay,
I like the idea. Well, I didn't really love him that much as a prospect. I gave him like fourth, early day 3.
He
type
made my
range.
top 100. I would say I had him in the 70s or 80s in my top 100. So like kind of a third round grade, essentially.
I thought this is one of those things where it's like, oh, I think that idea is interesting, maybe admirable. Like, well, he's a better man coverage beater than a zone beater, so let's kick him outside and see what happens. I
compared him to Christian Kirk, like that. More of a vertical slot guy. Like, I see him being really good on like sail routes and outbreakers. Maybe that's just because how they used him at Washington, but like that's kind of how I picture him. So like how he's been used so far, but I want to see him more. I'm like. I see him more as like a chunk play guy, not hey, you pepper him 12 times, all these short routes. I see him as like you get a couple catches and they go for 15 to 22 yards. Like he's a intermediate vertical attacker from the slot. That's how I pictured him and kind of how he looks so far as a pro, just because, he lacks some play strength. And yeah, I was glad because everyone wanted him on the outside this preseason. I was like, really? Okay, I'll give it a shot. Like,
give it a shot.
I'm wrong all the time on this. So, but yeah, he's kind of playing how I pictured him in college.
So because of that, though, I do think he's still, regardless of if I haven't been that impressed with him, I think from like a looking waivers are already passed and everything, I think he's probably the correct bet to make.
Agreed.
But the fact that he's already they liked him so much going into the season, and then he did deal with some injuries, but they also didn't want to really throw him back out there, and they're like, yeah, we got to throw Sterling Shepard out there. And look, I love Sterling Shepard.
I love how much we've talked about Sterling Shepard, and it's been relevant. Like,
like it's a real thing, and it might still it might end up continuing to be a real thing because he's just. He's not explosive anymore, but he's reliable as hell.
Smart,
and he's like, he's gritty, but I mean, he could be hurt in like 2 seconds. So that's another thing here too. I feel like the right move, the upside bet is McMillan. But I just am not that confident in the player. And really, I guess like Nate, if I was to say between the scale of 1 to 10, 1 being it's not going to happen, 10 being lock it in, this is what's going to happen. What are the odds that without Godwin, without Mike Evans, this entire offense just completely falls apart?
Like a 6.
Not good.
Because that's the offense. It's a big play passing game, and the run game's been much improved. I don't get me wrong, but it's not the strength of this team. Like this team is a boom bust passing game that thrives on Baker letting these guys go to work and screens to Godwin. Like that's the offense. So If you lose the two main guys who Baker has a lot of trust in, yeah, I think there's going to be a fall off with this offense, even if the run game has improved. And I do think there's going to be ways they can, manufacture some stuff. It just can't be as explosive as it was. I just don't think it's physically possible without those two guys playing.
You already felt it, honestly, on Monday night after Mike Evans left. It was like
tough.
Just started to get tighter and tighter. And look, I love Godwin, but he's not that vertical guy. So teams don't have to play them that way. You just, again, it felt it tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. And now we have no Godwin here. We're not getting explosive yak plays. We're not getting explosive layup plays. I do just wonder if it could be pretty tough. Now, from a fantasy perspective, these guys are at least interesting just because the Bucs defense on the other side. Oof. You want to break a record? You're doing it against the Bucs defense, okay? So like that's where it's going to be some of these shootout scripts. I do like producer Collins' note in the chat. Like they're not going to make Rachaad White a wide receiver, but he is going to scam his way to some receiving points in fantasy this year.
I would say the number one thing I'd focus on the Bucs, like just to see where they're going. Who gets the screens? Who gets the receiver screens? And that's who I'm going to be like, okay, that's the guy. Like it's who do they trust to be in that God? We say the Godwin role, not just a blocker or anything, but who gets those easy, cheap touches because it's such a big part of this offense. Does it totally go away, or is it like you said? Is they go to pony personnel and they get Rachaad White as a true, de facto receiver? I could see that. They're gonna have to get creative with it. So, but whoever gets those screens, those like which they throw 5, 6, 7 times a game, that's who I'm going to be betting on. If they start splitting those up, then I'm like, oh God, stay away. Because I don't know who gets the cheapies in this offense. Colin just says so scammy.
Very, very scammy. Chris Godwin right now from Fantasy Points Data leads the team in screen targets. Yep. Do you want to guess who's number 2?
Is it
who I
Rachaad
actually
White?
think we haven't mentioned yet, and I actually do think is the biggest fantasy winner from this.
Oh, Cade Otton?
Cade Otton.
Yeah,
Cade
I
Otton
love
is
Cade
number
Otton.
2. Dude, I think Cade Otton is like the real winner here.
He definitely is. And Baker likes him. Baker trusts him. Trust Cade. Everybody wants a Cade Otton. You love a tight end without gloves on. It's always a good sign.
Yeah, I think if you are looking for like an actual legit winner here, it might be Cade Otton.
Great call.
And look, everybody needs tight end help. I did actually move Cade Otton up really high in my rest of season rankings in terms of tight ends. So he was a guy too when I checked like waiver wires post like waivers this like just free agents post waivers this morning, he was available just to add in a couple spots. So there's a chance he could outproduce a lot of dudes, at the tight end position. So he's probably our real winner here. Let's move to the 49ers offense without Brandon Aiyuk. I mean, what a freaking week for the reception perception bros. We're down. Yeah. Not who cares about the 49ers?
Screw the 49ers.
Me. But the 49ers, yes, are down bad. Brandon Aiyuk, of course, going to be out for the rest of the regular season. We're going to be talking about that injury into 2025 because it looks pretty complex. Yep. Debo, of course, was hospitalized with like pneumonia-like symptoms. Juwan Jennings missed the game last week. He's dealing with a hip injury. So, Nate, what do we make of the wide receiver room? I mean, specifically, we know we have Kittle. We know we have Jordan Mason. We know we have CMC coming back theoretically at some point. These wide receivers without Aiyuk, what are we doing here?
Oh, man. I hope Jennings comes back because that's my answer. But but he's just battling injuries because that Purdy loves him. And I could tell Shanahan loves him, not only just because he's a dirty work guy. That guy's automatic on third down. Like those quick out routes from the slot. It's truly one of my favorite players in the league is Juwan Jennings. So I'm glad he could get some shine here. Like if he is back healthy, like he is the guy I think that to target in this passing tech, both for them and for fantasy purposes. The guy actually, even more than their first round rookie Pearsall, is Ronnie Bell is the guy I would be kind of sneakily looking at. They've always tried to make him happen. And he's got some juice. And when he's in there, they target him in the red zone. And this might be anecdotal from what I remember, but Ronnie Bell plays, he gets targets in the red zone. Like that. It's just a thing with this 49ers offense. So he's the kind of the sneaky one I'm actually looking at more than anything is Bell, along with Jennings if he's healthy. With Pearsall, it's just still, he got shot a few months ago.
I know.
And it's like, you could tell he's not all the way there when he runs. He's still got some rust on him. Obviously, like I expect that.
Yeah.
Like I don't expect him to come back and be, rip roaring ready to go. So yeah, I'm going to keep an eye on him, but I think this is going to be such a ground heavy attack, especially if CMC comes back, even with the Achilles. but Bell and Jennings would be the guy. Bell would just be my sneaky one. Like, and I just want to see how this makes out when all these guys are out, how that actually breaks down. But they always try to make him happen. They being like Shanahan, the 49ers coaches, and when he's in there, there's just targets going his way. So.
Yeah, I mean, I was not planning to bring up Ronnie Bell, so I'm glad you did. Juwan Jennings, I mean, I do think that dude is legitimately really good.
Yes.
He's 15th in terms of first downs per route run this year. Both him and Brandon Aiyuk were top 20 in receptions for first downs or touchdowns. Like, he's been an efficient player for this team for a long time. I hope he is healthy, because I think Jennings is not just I don't know. I kind of view him as a power slot player, but I also think he can win on some of these deeper, like especially against the Rams. And look, Rams defense is what it is, but I think he can win on some of these deeper, like crossing routes. So, and because Pearsall's not really an X, I don't really have a take on their 4th round rookie Jacob Cowing. I don't know if you do.
Not really. I was indifferent on him in the draft process. Yeah.
Yeah, I never got a chance to chart him, but people were pretty jazzed on him. There's a lot of like dynasty bros who think he's actually better than Ricky Pearsall, of course. But yeah, Pearsall's tough, man, because like, I'm with you that I charted that game for him against Kansas City, and I just don't want to come away with like a lot of hard conclusions.
Right.
I get what you can see what they're trying to do with him. He runs a bunch of like whip routes early in that game, but he's not on the same page with Purdy, and he's not beating man coverage at this point. Yeah, because he got shot. Like he's their healthiest receiver, and he got shot 2 months ago.
That was such a funny tweet. That oh my god, because it was just like their healthiest receiver got shot 2 months ago, and that's what they're dealing with right now.
That's what they're dealing with right now. So I don't know that Pearsall is going to be ready to rock. So definitely Jennings was my lean. If I got to pick a 49ers receiver, I don't know about him as a true league winner type or whatever, but I do think that he's probably in a really good spot to be, I don't know, let's call it like a top 35 receiver rest of the way.
I think it's fair. Jennings has had production when he's had to step up. So it's not like this is theory from me and you. Like, this isn't just like, take the small pie, make it bigger and go, look at that. It's like, this is true. Like, he's done this. He's stepped up to the role. It's just health. Like, I agree with you. He's the guy I'd be targeting all this. And so my Ronnie Bell stat, and so it's not anecdotal that he always seems like he gets targeted in the red zone. He has 18 career targets. Okay, this is the guy I'm touting right now. A quarter of those are 18 career targets. 4 of them are in the red zone for 3 touchdowns and 4 first downs. So boom. I'm telling you, like, when he's on the field, they like him in the red zone for some reason because he has good feel. He's got some twitch and stuff like that. So I understand it. But yeah, he's there. Kendrick Bourne used to be in this offense. He's become like their Kendrick Bourne. 3rd down in red zones. Like, that's all he gets his targets. Yeah, so
I can see that. And then I think Chris Conley's their sacrificial X. When he's out there, he's clearing things out.
He's Chris Conley.
He's a special teamer. Last thing on this. Tight end 1 rest of the season, if you had to pick between George Kittle, Brock Bowers, which way would you go?
Kittle, just because who else is getting the targets? And it's kind of, like, I know we just talked about Jennings, but man, Bowers is like second in catches right now.
Yeah, who's gonna catch the ball in Las Vegas?
Get my boy Desmond Ridder starting for them. We'll really cook there.
Gross.
I know. I know. I got tagged when they signed him. I was like, I'm never going to escape it. Yeah. I'm never going to escape it. But yeah, sorry I had him over Pickett and Matt Corral. But I think. Man, Bowers is just getting peppered so much. No Devontae Adams, too. And no matter what quarterback's in there, it's going to be a safer offense, too. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to change my answer to Bowers because I think Bowers, no matter who the quarterback is, they're designing everything to Bowers. It's hilarious so yeah, I changed my answer to the Raiders and Bowers because that actually makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, he's second in the NFL in catches right now because Chris Godwin passed him up on Monday night, 50-47, and then he has scored 1 touchdown. Like, he might be the tight end 1 and score like 3 touchdowns all year, which is pretty just. Atrocious.
It's the Keyshawn Johnson of tight ends. That's
very scammy stuff going on there. Last thing here, this one we don't know if it's a long-term injury. Seahawks might be without DK Metcalf for a bit, and I know that you're pretty fond of what you've seen out of Seattle this year. I wanted to throw this one in here because interesting stat here from Hayden Winks, which if you're watching on YouTube, we can probably put this one up here. The Seahawks lead the NFL in the last 4 weeks in wide receiver fantasy usage by a lot. The Jets are number 2, but the Seahawks lead in fantasy usage to wide receivers again by a lot in the last 4 weeks. So what does this room look like without DK? Because he is very much a one of these things doesn't look like the other in this wide receiver room, and they're not throwing Jake Bobo out there. In all respect to Jake Bobo, they're not throwing him out there.
Jake Bobo.
I know. It's kind of like the Diet Coke Juwan Jennings, but they're not. Yeah. They're not putting him out there to do DK Metcalf things. So
yeah,
but JSN is definitely not playing X. Tyler Lockett is not doing that at this point in his career. So what does this offense look like if we don't have DK Metcalf? And I kind of want to have a JSN conversation because, like, if not now, from a production standpoint, when is he going to do it?
Yeah, I think the roles are going to be kind of similar. Like, man, this is hard because talking about both sides of my mouth. A role in the saying that he's going to be the X, but maybe how they use him is going to be differently. It's not as vertically attacking. None of these guys are that vertical anymore. JSN's a short intermediate guy. Lockett's Lockett. He can be, but it's just it's Lockett. Then so now they kind of lose that verticality of the offense, which kind of hurts a little bit because that's what helps out this offense. So like create some breathing room. It's not the run game. Kenneth Walker can create some explosive plays, but it's been up and down so much. So that I actually do like Bobo in the sense that he's more of a sound player than DK. DK Metcalf is one of the most maddening players in the NFL to me. Like he's gigantic. He runs really fast and he doesn't play like he's gigantic. And that is always going to infuriate me. He's good at certain routes. He's terrible at others. So it's like he's limited in some scope. Bobo can help out a lot of the other aspects. Maybe he does help out the run game. Maybe he does help out doing some of the more of the dirty work stuff, doesn't run the wrong route, doesn't take the wrong path on a route. So there's maybe more soundness and more reliability there, but it's still losing a huge explosive play element. So to your point, doesn't that hurt JSN a little bit if you're losing space that he's supposed to operate in? And that's hard for me. Like I think Jason's been fine. He's been solid, but he's a slot only guy still. And that's the good and the bad with him. He can win. He could do some nice things from it. But then, okay, DK gets hurt. And like you said, well, we're not wanting JSN out there. Oh, man. And when you get it's the Jaguars thing again, you get into these limited roles that really has repercussions when injuries happen. So, like you said, if not now, when? But this offense kind of needs that vertical element because especially Geno likes a lot of empty. They're very pass heavy. They like to be in these lighter personnels because of the receiver talent. But it still kind of feels the same for JSN. It might even just be tighter. So it might be more cheapy, good for PPR.
It's
but
a PPR
maybe
scam.
It's a PPR scam, but the yards might stay the same. But it might be a couple more catches and a couple more targets a game because who else is going to get them?
Yeah, this receiver room is so bizarre because we've got JSN, DK Metcalf, and Tyler Lockett. They've all run 289, 287, and 247 routes per True Media. And then you go down to number 4 is Jake Bobo with 57. Number 5 is Laviska Shenault with 16, and he is not a wide receiver. I don't know what he's listed as, but he's not a wide receiver. Yeah. So
he's a returner, fake gadget guy.
Yeah, he's Cordero Patterson. Before, when Arthur Smith is on like his whatever amount team by then, he'll turn Laviska Shenault into like a Pro Bowl running back in his 10th year. Like remember
that was my comparison for Shenault when he came out of Colorado. I said, what if you take Cordero Patterson and slow him down like by half speed? Cordero Patterson, I think I said, was like my final analysis of it. Yeah, I know, but that was him as a rookie. So yeah, this is a few years later.
And yeah, like from a production standpoint too, they're throwing the ball a lot. They're super pass heavy. I've mentioned to you that I'm a little worried about kind of an oil and water effect between Kenneth Walker being like an under center explosive back and this being a very spread shotgun passing offense. That's generally worried me. Walker's been awesome this year, and I think Walker's a really good player, and they've got him a lot of targets in the pass game too, which has been cool. But yeah, these receivers are very static in their usage. You summed up my thoughts on JSN perfectly, which is he's been fine. I don't think he has been actively bad, but he's not a needle mover. Somebody in our Panic Meter show when like user submissions called him Fancy Tyler Boyd, and I'm like, that kind of hits.
If the shoe fits,
that's not bad. Because he is a volume receiver, which makes him weird in this crowded receiver room because he's not really great after catch player either, but he's like a smooth separator in the short and underneath, or the short and intermediate area. I would like to see more intermediate routes for him now that DK's, if he's going to miss time, and he's going to have to be a bit of a compiler, like a Bud Light Keenan Allen type of player is kind of what you want JSN to be, but I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. And Tyler Lockett, meanwhile, like, he's not going away. He is still, from a first downs per route run perspective, he actually leads the team by a lot. Tyler Lockett has gotten a first down on 10.12% of his routes. Jake Bobo, your boy, is number 2, 7%. DK's at 6.6, and JSN's not behind at 6.57. So, like, it's been actually kind of an inefficient passing game in a weird way because of these receivers. So, it's a weird offense, but yeah, hopefully this is the time for JSN just from like a fantasy perspective. But I think from a real life football perspective, I'm glad we're kind of on the same page. Like, he is what he is. Not a bad thing, but he is what he is.
Yeah, he's a secondary pass catcher to me. You know, he's not the primary, like, meaning that he's not the alpha that deserves 15 targets every game. He's a third down stick mover. Okay, underneath option. You know, like, those guys to me are the secondary guys that's what you need to have a winning offense, but you're always going to need someone above him, someone that's going to be the primary guy above him, which right now is DK, or was, but that's why the roles slot so well. No pun intended. But now it's like, with him being more primary, okay, we'll see how that goes. Like, you know, the Bengals had Tyler Boyd for a while, but then they drafted T. Higgins and Jamar Chase for a reason.
Exactly.
You need guys on the outside that can win. That's a need in the shoot. That's why the freaking Chiefs just traded for DeAndre Hopkins. You need guys that can win on ball from the outside to have an effective passing game. You just need it.
Yeah, gets a fantasy bump, but again, I think kind of is what he is at this point. So, all right, let's toss to a break here. Let's come back with things that Nate's nerding out about right after this. We're back, Nate. You got something you're nerding out about this week, and it seems like it's an expansion of a topic we kind of started to hit on yesterday on Football 301.
It is. It's the Broncos have a good run game, and I'm digging it, which shouldn't surprise. Like, I shouldn't be surprised by it, but I kind of have given up on the offense a little bit after watching enough Bo Nix. So not talking about the passing game. They need the run game, and this run game is good. It is a Sean Payton run game, which is very bully ball at you, plenty of fullback runs. They've chopped out on all the motions and shifts because Bo Nix can't handle it in the huddle, which is a very real thing. But this run game right now, and yes, they just played the Saints last week, so take it a little grain of salt. But they're 8th in early down running back success and explosive run rate. They're 4th in explosive run rate on early downs, and if you include QB runs, they're 5th overall in combined sex rate. So I think they're using Bo Nix as a little bit of a Taysom Hill, runner, a little bit of a, they're starting to kind of implement though and realize that he's fast and big and can run a little bit, and maybe that we shouldn't throw as much. So
I gotta say that was crazy because producer Colin, shout out to Colin, in the preseason when I think Bo Nix had some 20 plus yard 20 plus mile per hour run or whatever, he sent me the tweet about it. I was like, what if Sean Payton didn't get his new Drew Brees? What if he got his new Taysom Hill? And I was like, well, number one, dude, you gotta tweet that. And then number two, in the Thursday night game, before I had my sleepy time tea, during the Thursday night game, Drew Brees was in the booth with Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit, and Bo Nix is taking off on a long run. He said, "Matt, wow, he looks like Taysom
Hill."
Crazy if you took Taysom Hill 12th overall. I think Bo Nix will be better quarterback than Taysom Hill, but still.
But
crazy stuff.
I think that's what they realized to lift up this offense is, okay, we can use him as a runner. We can use, Sean Payton wants to always be under center. And so, but this is a way, okay, make the gun runs a little bit more, have some more venom to him, more teeth to it. And Bo Nix can do it. Like, he's a good runner. When he gets out there, he's going to turn down a lot of throws, but he's going to run. But I really think just the running back runs, the Javonte Williams, Audric Estime missed a couple holes. I think he was a little juiced up in his first kind of regular. A lot of juiced up.
Fumbled too.
Yeah. The first run that he had, the hole was like right there, and he tried to bounce it, and he's like, "Oh shoot!" And then he like gets back up, and it goes for like a couple yards, like decent gain, but it should have been for like 10 or 20. But they're gonna pound it. Like, this is what the offense is gonna be built around. Their defense is gonna be really good. So they're gonna be in a lot of tight games where they can stay in these neutral game scripts. So I'm kind of just buying into this run game and being very real. There's proof in the pudding. Sean Payton has put together very good run games in the past. kind of gets split between some backs, if you remember Mark Ingram and Kamara and stuff like that. That's what he kind of prefers. He prefers one bully and then one kind of more pass catching type. They've tried to make Jaleel McLaughlin happen. Now they got Audric Estime back there, Javonte Williams. But we talked about it yesterday. It really just seems like Williams is, okay, he's going to get these touches. And I think fantasy purposes, it's going to be there. The usage is going to be there. The yards are going to be there because this is how this team is built. So, and I'm digging it. Like it's a sound run game. There's no bad runs. Everything's running to the right boxes. Of course, it's Sean Payton. But seeing how the formula of this team is happening, and I kind of had it crystallized, I think, against the Saints, where I was like, oh, okay, this is it. This is your attack this year, which feels right. So I do think that I think that this run game is real. It's a top 10 run game, and it's one worth investing in if you can find ways to get Williams and other guys in there. And Nix is actually viable now because he can run. Like, at least fantasy purposes. Real life purposes, I don't know. But I think his legs aren't going to go away as far as week in, week out, because they've realized that this is an explosive play element of their offense.
Yeah, I mean, Nix is a legit like super flex starter or 2 QB type guy in fantasy for sure, because he can run, period, end of story. Like, doesn't even matter what the rest of the pass game looks like. If he can run a little bit, he can be a QB2 for you in super flex. And yeah, this run game, I think they at times really wanted to get Javonte Williams kind of out of there, but it's consolidated to him a little bit. He's fine. Over the last 3 weeks, he's played 62.8% of the snaps. Okay. He's had 40.7% of the team carries. And he has, Jaleel McLaughlin, interesting little, passing game back, but he hasn't really done much this year. He's only, these last 3 games, he's only run a route on 19.8% of the dropbacks, and Javonte Williams has been up there at 45.3%. Expected fantasy points per game, he's been right around like 13.7, and so he's gotten the usage has consolidated to Williams a little bit. So if this run game, because again, this is something we talked about, like I do think getting offensive linemen back too, that's another thing too.
Yes.
This line was a mess to start the season. McGlinchey's healthier. The guards are really good. Ben Powers, and who's the other guy that they have that's I'm blanking right now. Miners, right? Miners.
Yes.
Miners. Yeah.
Whitewater. Yeah.
But anyways, those two guys are playing pretty well right now. They're getting healthier out at the tackle spot. Yeah, it's a good offensive line. So I think there's some staying power to this run game here.
I do too. And like you look at, future schedule, it's a mixed bag of some good run, like Panthers this week. Great. But Ravens run defense is really good. The passing defense is not, but their run defense is good. And then Chiefs actually run defense has been good this year. They don't give up a lot of explosive plays, but then you got Falcons, Raiders, so you have some decent matchups, but I just think because their defense is good, it's I'm trying to think who kept saying it 500 million times. It was Monday night. I think it was Louis Riddick. They're playing complementary football, this Broncos team. And, we talked about, like, this is a legit playoff team because their defense is that good, like truly a top 3 unit. And then the run game, I think, is getting up to where I feel it's not just a matchup dependent run game where I'm like, oh, well, yeah, they played the Saints that week. I think this is one that's going to have some real legs to it. Oh God, a real floor to it, a high floor to it as they play even better defenses. So I just, that's why I'm not shying away from it. There's a resume of Peyton. Like you said, the offensive line's getting healthy. Just a lot of things point to this being a very real run game.
Yeah, and I think people are going to be hesitant to really want to buy into Javonte Williams specifically, just because he has not been a good fantasy back this year and all that stuff. But just to kind of put a pin on these things changing, and it is the Saints, like we said, yards before contact per rush in week 7, 2.71, according to True Media. That was clearly the best of the season for Javonte Williams. And then 3.57 yards after contact per carry, which was just ahead of his week 5 number of 3.54 for the best of the year. So I think he's starting to play really well. I think the team is going to just trust him more and more as long as he doesn't make mistakes and kind of continues to get the flow of the offense, as long as Sean Payton's not mad at him for saying coach is going to turn up after this game in New Orleans. As long as he doesn't get in the doghouse because of that particular comment. But hey, everyone knows Sean Payton likes to party. That's not a well-kept secret. Anyway,
Oh, that's funny.
I think that this is a good, interesting move. He might be somebody that you can buy low on a little bit with that schedule coming up. You'll know the matchups that you can play him in.
Yeah, and I know. I wish I kind of got up front of this before that Saints game because I was starting to keep an eye on it. But no, I do think this is a very real thing. Like as far as not saying like, oh, it's the best run game in the league, but one that's going to be at least good.
All right. I have one thing for saying the quiet part out loud. Nate, I don't know if you do or not, but I've got one here. Najee Harris kind of looks good.
Oh, I know. He does.
And I don't really know where this came from because if you look at
did he listen to the pod? Did he listen to me say give him no more touches?
Yeah. Did he hear Nate Tice? I mean, what was that? Didn't the Colts linebacker after the week 4 game call him soft, basically? Something like that. He said for a big guy, he ran super soft.
He said we weren't scared of him or something like that. Yeah, like we weren't scared of his soft runs or something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. Because then if you look at, not that Dallas game, but definitely if you look at week 6 and week 7 against the Raiders in week 7, and again, I realize these teams, the Raiders and sneakily the Jets, not a very good run defense either. 6.14 yards after contact in week 6, 3.43 in week 7. He has been run well. They've also been, I'm curious just what you've seen structurally from the run game because it has been better the last 2 weeks and it was like a disaster to start the year, honestly, which was super surprising. So have you seen anything different from the run game? Because what I've seen from Harris, and again, I don't think a lot of people want to ever get excited about Najee Harris in fantasy specifically, but the guy is definitely running his ass off the last 2 weeks, which I think he deserves some shine for.
That's it, is that he's running his ass off. It's a true, he started to develop a habit, and I get it. He was in a rough offensive situation. He was stopping his feet on contact. And I'm not going
to watch too much Lev Bell film.
Yeah, and that wasn't, I compared him to James frickin' Conner coming out of college. Think of how James Conner runs. So he kind of just became like, it was where, okay, if he got to 4 yards and got contacted, it was like he got 4 yards. He wasn't even falling forward. He wasn't getting cheap yards or bouncing off a DB and getting, easy yards after they, barrel over a DB, which should be an advantage for a 230 plus round running back. So it really is effort. It really is. He's running angry. And I think that's a very real thing. This is a human element kind of thing. And it was the week that I called him out and said, "God, stop giving him touches. This isn't even worth it." It was that week. He all of a sudden ran so hard. I was like, I don't think you listen to the show, but but I think also the offensive line is a little more cohesive in the sense that they need reps together. They had so many injuries. I was very optimistic about this offensive run game and the line, but then when you lose several starters and moving guys around, like their fourth center, I think that is a big part of it and why they're figuring out, okay, this works for us, this doesn't. But truly, it's an effort thing. Running the ball, it's not fun to get tackled. But you always have to learn to kind of but if I inflict the damage, it helps a little bit on that pain. And it feels like Harris kind of rediscovered that. He rediscovered his kind of, I don't know, running smile. Oh God, that's a wrestling reference you won't get, but it's like,
sorry.
So Shawn Michaels retired one time and he said, "I lost my smile." It's other stuff was going on. It became a very famous bit. But anyways, he kind of did lose his smile. And then now it feels like, oh yeah, that's right. I can run like this. So I truly just think this is a human element thing with him. And I think it's real though. I really do think he's like, no, this is mine. This feels good. And we're seeing some production with it now.
Yeah, I love it. And this just offense starts to make a lot more sense if they can run the ball because it just, I mean, I like Justin Fields as a designed runner, but those plays weren't necessarily totally clicking with him and Arthur Smith. So, and I think that's another big reason why they went back to Russ. You and I talked about it on Football 301 yesterday that from the standpoint of, hey, we kind of sort of liked what we saw from Russ and it made sense. Did it elevate the offense? I don't know about that, but just what he did makes sense with George Pickens. It makes sense taking those shots off play action. I mean, Russell Wilson just literally, the ball is, Fields is more of almost like a line drive thrower and Russell will pop it up like a fly ball, and hey, George Pickens can go and track it or a DB can make a mistake and tackle him and commit a pass interference. Yeah, hey, Whatever
Still
you got
counts.
to whatever you got to do to move the ball, baby. We got Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin running real routes for this team. We are not going to be picky. But this week, Najee Harris in the Steelers run game does face the Giants on, I believe it's Sunday. No, it's Monday Night Football. Excuse me.
Yes.
So, it's kind of their 20th. The Giants in rushing success rate allowed. They're a better pass rush team than I think a run defense. So maybe another spot where he can have another nice game.
Yep. I don't think it's going away. This is the formula for this team too. So, but he's always going to get touches. Is that they're not going to want Russell Wilson throwing the ball 35 times. And I will say this, Russ in his later career, I would just say Broncos onwards, is that he's become a bit of a check down artist on 3rd and long. So there's some cheapy touches there too for Najee Harris or Warren if he's in there. But I really do think Najee is earning more and more touches.
Yeah, Warren's just got to get healthy. He just doesn't look right. And it could be. It fortunately could end up being one of those seasons where he just never gets.
I love the 3 plays that he's in though. He'll have an awesome pass protection rep. He'll make a guy miss, and it's like, oh, I understand why you're always hurt, because every play is the last play of the Super Bowl for you. I love the effort, but yeah, it's not good for long-term health.
All right, let's take our final break. We come back. We'll preview a pretty electric Thursday Night Football game, Rams at Vikings, right after this. All right, we're back. We got Thursday Night Football this week, Nate. We've got, like I said, Rams at Vikings. It's a 48.5 point over-under. The Vikings are 3-point favorites, according to BetMGM. We've got Cooper Kupp rumors swirling around here. Generally, I feel like when it gets like a bunch of insiders are trying to report this, I think it was Diana Russini, Mike Silver, and Jordan Rodriguez from The Athletic. Some bigger names are starting to pop it out there too. My instinct is he's not long for the Rams. Is just when you start to see.
We went from like, oh, we're playing him to like, oh, we might actually not play him like in 24 hours. So that made me, like you said, maybe think that they're very, very much shopping him.
Yeah, which guys, man, is so crazy. I don't know if that's a. I don't know if that's a, hey, we're doing right by Cooper Kupp because we're not going to contend this year, or they're just trying to dump the salary and start to look towards the next year. And it's weird, man, because I don't know if you have thoughts on this or if you know anything about it, but like the NFC West doesn't look that intimidating at this point. I realize the Rams their record stinks, but like if they get Kupp back and then they get Puka Nacua back in a couple weeks, like Kyron Williams is balling out, like why can't they make a run at this thing? I don't know. Seems a little odd to me, but what do I know?
The NFC is just wide open, period. I mean, now you got the Bucs falling off, like you got, the rest of the NFC South outside the Falcons, just, Panthers are not a team. The Saints looked like they quit last Thursday. That was Ryan Fitzpatrick was hilarious during halftime. He like straight up just was like basically told the Saints, like the Saints offense, to stop ruining the vibes. He was like, we're in New Orleans. It's halftime. It's Drew Brees night. You hear this crowd? He's like, what is this? Right? He was basically saying, stop ruining the vibes offense and stop doing that. So, but you just look from division to division, NFC. It's like NFC North is oh my God, murderer's row. NFC East, Cowboys look weak. The Commanders are interesting, but the Eagles have faults too. So it just feels so wide open. That's not like a, throw the towel in type of season. If you have an offense that like the Rams have, even with injuries, they've been productive. Like they've been one of the most productive offenses, especially on early downs. So that is kind of like, I'm with you. That's like, it's not moving on from Cooper Kupp is interesting, especially age and everything, but like Puka's coming down, Puka's coming down the road. So that's going to really help. So I'm with you. That's like, it's not totally like a lost season, even if the record's not there right now. And Stafford's just balling out.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And all their receivers, like efficiency target numbers are crazy because they're getting the ball from Matt Stafford. Yeah. So in this game, anything stand out to you? Like I'm assuming we get Cooper Kupp in this game. His like 69.5 is his receiving yard over under. I wonder if they could, and his catches number is over 6.5 at minus 135. Like I do kind of think if he's out there, he's going to just get peppered with targets. Like, hey, showcase, look at how healthy he is. Look at how healthy he is. Right. Don't you want to trade for him?
Phones are open. That phone line will be live right after the game. I do like Kyron Williams overs. I think the Rams attack, and everyone knows me, I love that run play duo. The Rams are the best at that run. Them and the Lions, actually. Them, Lions, and Cardinals. Gee, 3 of my favorite offenses. But they...
He's got it tight, folks. He's got it tight.
I do. Because usually if you do that, you have a kick-ass offensive line. So that's why I typically like those teams. But with Kyren Williams is that run play duo is very good against the Vikings. And the Lions got after him with it. They got him after him with a few different runs. I feel like they're just going to like not try and reinvent the wheel and go, it's going to be a heavy run script with gashes through the air. Watch what the Lions did. Well, the Rams have they could do that passing wise, just supercharged because it's Stafford instead of Goff. And then I think the run game can do that. It's not to the level of Montgomery and Gibbs and the Lions offensive line. It's still a damn good run game, and they're going to give Kyren touches. So I think this is just type of game script. I think also receiving overs for Kyren Williams. I could see him getting a screen or two. They love giving screens, especially against blitz-happy teams. And I couldn't find the longest completion, but over longest completion for Tutu Atwell. Like, they catch him on a blitz and they gash him just with one big play because that's how you have to get after this Vikings defense. So, yeah, some of the Rams overs I'm actually more high on than maybe I initially thought, especially since the Rams defense is weak and the Vikings offense can get after teams too. So, I don't know if you want to just say, oh, yeah, Justin Jefferson might get a lot, too. Justin Jefferson said, oh, I want to break 100 yards. He said, I'm so close, so I want to break it. So you say that publicly for a reason. So maybe look out for some heavy Justin Jefferson script on the other side, which shouldn't surprise anybody.
18.5 is the longest reception for Tutu Atwell.
Take it.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah, I see that. I see that happening because I could see a gash play coming.
Kyren Williams, his receiving yard over is 16.5.
16.5.
That's a little high. But
I wish it was like
possible.
12.5 or like 11.5. Just that one screen that you can take. Yeah.
I do love your, usually I'm a coward and go with the rush attempts, but it's 18.5. Again, pretty high for Kyren Williams. Like, there's a chance the Vikings just get on top of this team and then they're not really running the ball.
It's a short week. Do you want to wear them out like on a short week? So that I'm with you on that.
It is at home. I misspoke. I think this game is in LA, but 74.5 is the rushing yard over for Kyren Williams, which I do like. He could potentially break one on one of these duo runs, and he has not necessarily had like big plays lately. But the last 3 weeks he had 94 yards, 102 yards, 76 yards, and he's scored like a boatload of touchdowns all year long. He's on. I think Dalton said earlier in the week he's on pace for like 27 rushing touchdowns this year, which is absurd. So yeah, I think that I like this Kyren Williams rushing yard bet by you specifically.
Yeah, it just makes sense as far as styles. Styles makes fights and all that. And what the Rams lean into the last 2 years is duo, and this is the perfect defense to run it against. So they are so funny. The Rams try and find every single way possible to run duo at the bubble on the defensive line. I won't get into that, but really just like they shift every formation and motion just to run at that weak point on the defense. So against a Vikings defense that wants to shift and do all that and motion and move all their guys around, all right, just bury them, just run them over. And that's what they want to do anyways. Also, maybe Sam Darnold over rush attempts.
he's 3.5 minus 140.
So maybe a couple scrambles there. They still haven't really used him on a designed run. I'm still waiting for that in the red zone. I think they have, but like more of it. And he's, he'll still scramble. And this Rams defense, because they don't have a ton of talent, they have some interesting guys up front, but it's more of a sum of its parts. They do a lot on the back end. So I could see Darnold going like, all right, screw this, I'm scrambling. And so maybe, get some more rush attempts out of him. So if you want to sprinkle in a little QB funk in there.
Yeah, and if you want to bet against Darnold, the over on interceptions is, it's only 0.5 and it's minus 110. Not bad.
The Rattler one hit late last game, so that was
it's tough. You got to wait for it, but it was an easy one. Lot of good weird props by us on last week's episode.
I know. For one, we were just spinning the wheel on. Yeah, we came out okay. Your Troy Franklin tout was great in the end.
That was over early too. It's like, all right, cool. We'll wrap that one up.
As soon as they designed, it was like the second play of the game because I just watched this game because I was like, all right, I'm about to tout the Broncos. So at least better study this game. they designed the first 2 bootlegs to Troy Franklin. So like, if you look back, I was like, good tout, because how'd you know that they're going to design plays to him on the first drive?
I did not. Sean Payton doesn't return my calls. All right, that's going to do it for us on Thursday Night Football. Just one piece of news, just as we're leaving here. The Titans, the trade terms for the Hopkins trade is in. The pick becomes a 4th rounder, not a 5th rounder, if Kansas City makes the Super Bowl. They don't have to win it. They just got to make the Super Bowl, and Hopkins plays 60% of the snaps. So, okay. I mean,
60% of snaps in the Super Bowl or the rest of the year? As
a Chief, rest of the year.
Okay. Well,
I mean, make the Super Bowl. They just got to reach it.
More realistic for the Chiefs than say like the Davante Adams trade, which was like all those terms of that. It's like, what do you guys think is going to happen?
Well, what they think is going to happen versus what is going to happen is a whole different conversation there in New York. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Nate, what do you got coming up on the website this week? Right
about Caleb Williams, which has been a lot of fun. He's good, guys. He's a good player. He's good. I'm very excited to share that article. But that's going on. Check me out on NFL Network tomorrow morning, 6:15 a.m. Luckily, my son usually wakes me up about 5:30, so I should be up. But I'll have 7 alarms set for that one. I'll be like Lanning from Oregon. Did you see his alarm schedule? The head coach Dan Lanning. Oh my God! And I was like, that was me in college. Like,
yeah, Dan. I saw that. I was like, Dan, grow up, man. What are we doing?
I know. And also, if you have a wife, isn't she just going to wake the F up?
Oh yeah.
If I had more than one alarm set, my wife would kill me. So yeah, check out my Caleb Williams stuff. Football 301 tomorrow with Charles. Check out our episode as well. You always get me shine, say all the Nate Tice fans. I should say all the Matt Harmon fans on Football 301. You know,
that's I don't know about that, but yeah, it's a good episode. We talk a lot about Caleb Williams on there as well. So good discussion, because that game is going to be super fun. Tomorrow, Andy Behrens, noted Bears homer, will be on the show, as well as Tara Roberts, as she always is. I'm sure Andy will be bringing up the Bears Commanders game in his matchups that deserve your attention. That's the bet of the week. That's like minus 1,000. We'll be talking Bears Commanders on that episode. Even if Jaden Daniel isn't going to play, Andy is bringing up the damn Bears tomorrow, coming off their bye. So make sure to listen to that, people. Make sure to listen to all of Nate's content. If you like the show, and if you don't like the show, I mean, how could you not like the show? Right. I mean, Jawan Jennings breakdowns.
Sam
Trey
Darnold
Palmer
over
nugs.
rushing attempts.
I mean, duo runs to watch for on Thursday Night Football.
Right.
How can you not like the show? If you like the show, leave us a rating and review. It would really mean a lot to me personally. I would consider it like a real, true, personal nicety to me. If you don't like the show, I like what you said on the show, Nate, yesterday. You can tweet at me if you don't like the show. Just tell me personally on Twitter. Yeah, just tell me how much I suck on Twitter. But don't leave a rating and review, and don't
leave
let
the reviews
my bosses
nice
know.
and pristine.
Yes.
Yeah, keep it clean down there.
Correct. All right. On that note, we'll be back tomorrow with the preview show. Until then, we're out.